And Happy New Year. Welcome back to the DigiGods podcast. We are going to be without Mark for a few weeks. Tim, thank you.
Back again.
Tim Cogshell sitting in once again. Tim and I were on Film Week yesterday, so this is 2 days in a row for us just rambling about
That
movies.
was a very interesting film week.
January, the patron saint of bad movies.
That time of year.
Yeah. Mark is working the Golden Globes this weekend, so he gets no time off. Long days. It is. He's going to be up to his neck in Golden Globes, and then he leaves for a couple of weeks in Europe for
parody,
for romance.
Yeah, for romance in Paris. I've worked the Golden Globes many times. It really is for people who are working the event, particularly in jobs like the one that Mark said. It's like a 2-day thing.
Yeah.
Just the preparation, getting your spots, getting your team, getting your crew out.
It's like the Oscars. It's like it's like the dry run for the Oscars for a lot of these outlets. So
and plus it involves television, which the Golden Globes involves way more actual people.
Yeah,
there's actual human beings doing stuff. More people doing stuff with respect to the Golden Globes than the Oscars every year.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
it's so fascinating. Anyway. So we wish Mark well as he goes through the Golden Globes grind. Yesterday, I do want to share this story because the Seinfeld episode with the soup Nazi is so famous. Tim and I found the sandwich Nazi. It was truly a rare experience. After we did the show yesterday, we went to this market that I'd gotten a personal recommendation for in Pasadena,
which is another story.
It's another story in and of itself how I got the recommendation. But I thought, I've never heard of this place. It says they had great sandwiches. Let's go. And we walk in, and it's just a little Italian market, and there's this little crusty old Italian man sitting next to a meat slicer behind a really high counter with a pile of wrapped sandwiches in front of him. And I walk up to him and I go, is this where we get sandwiches? And he just points at the pile.
Yeah.
He just take one. I said, I don't eat beef. Do you have anything with chicken or turkey? Take it, you'll like it. And at which point you just didn't.
I just took a sandwich.
Tim didn't want to deal with
it. Whatever, give me a sandwich.
And I insisted on turkey, and he rolled his eyes, and he gave me crap for about 5 minutes while he made me a turkey sandwich.
Just take a sandwich. Don't worry. You'll love it. You'll be back. Just take a sandwich.
Yeah.
Like your dietary concerns notwithstanding.
It truly was the soup Nazi of sandwiches.
But I got to tell you, the sandwich that I just took arbitrarily because I didn't really want to get into a knife fight with this little Italian dude. The sandwich was fantastic.
You know what? It was great. The turkey sandwich he made me, amazing. He's for real. He's for real. The little man behind the meat slicer. So we salute you, little sandwich, little Italian sandwich Nazi behind the meat slicer. We salute you because you're funny and you're awesome. So anyway, and I will not be able to attend our awards evening, but you will be. Are you presenting something?
I am. I will be presenting James Laxton, the cinematographer's award for Moonlight.
Fantastic. He just won another award from the National Society this morning.
Oh, he really? I didn't even know that. That's right. Good. Yeah. So, an unusual choice for us. Interesting, because for the last several years, of course, Lubetzky.
Yeah. He won like 3 in a row.
Yeah, and for these really sort of big films.
Yeah.
Bringing to bear all kinds of really sort of, cinematography and requiring high-end technology and things in space and green screens and inventing things. I think they had to invent things, and we're shooting The Revenant, of course, we're talking about the one with Sandy Bullock and the Gravity. And so really like the Birdman.
Sure.
Really complicated movies that required complicated technology. Tremendous stuff. And won those awards rightfully so. So now we have James Laxton, who is Moonlight, an absolutely extraordinary movie, but it's somewhat like a stage play. This movie, the cinematography in this movie couldn't be obtrusive. The cinematography had to be and invisible,
Yeah.
yet still beautiful. Now, there's a complicated thing that James has to do in this movie, too, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about it because I'm a brother.
Yeah.
Lighting black folks,
Yeah.
particularly black folks in Florida at noon sometimes. There are three actors that play one character in this movie.
Over three different periods
Over
of his
three
life.
different periods of time. This the character's nickname is Black. And one of his little friends literally nicknamed him that, properly so.
Yeah.
He's a very dark-skinned little black boy. It's the dynamic that's going on in the movie, right? This is in the way James lights these men, starting with that boy, over the course of this movie, is just absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
It takes a specific effort, and you have to do it in a very precise way. There is a scene in this film where that little boy, when he's a little boy, he's sitting in a white porcelain tub against a stark white tile wall covered in soft white bubbles. This little black boy carved out in silhouette. Mm-hmm. Most cinematographers would have been, oh, hell no. We're not doing this. No, James understood how to do that and why to do that. 2 or 3 times in this movie, that little boy, or the character, the next character, the middle character, is wearing a stark white shirt, standing there, carved out in a silhouette against the sun, on purpose, again, very, very deliberately. There's a scene in this movie where the third incarnation of that character, right? Again, a dark black man, now this beefy, buffed up, hardcore, he's been to prison and all this kind of stuff. He's lying in a bed of nothing but white sheets, no shirt on, just this rippling black man in this bed of white. Every one of these moments, and a half a dozen like them, are extremely deliberate. They speak to something deeper than just the images themselves, these ideas that we have about people and what is beautiful, and how these things can be rendered as beautiful. He captures this, mostly with just the light and the camera. No tricks. Yeah. No CGI to save him. Just the light and the camera. And for that, we're going to give him an award.
I find it interesting, too, that the 2 films that have been on the top of everybody's list for cinematography, which is Moonlight and La La Land, both of them start in bright daylight with very, very long single takes. Yeah. And neither of those cinematographers are guys who've been on anybody's list in the last few years. So, I mean, they are both, new to the scene. But it is really, La La Land, obviously, it's not giving anything away if you haven't seen it, but it's a very elaborately choreographed and a very consciously choreographed long take that had to be rehearsed endlessly. Whereas Moonlight, what's different in Moonlight is if you're not paying attention, you will not know it is a single take. Yeah. And all those different actors, they enter the frame naturally and they exit the frame naturally, and nobody looks like they're choreographed and no one looks like they've been staged, and it's just it's really, but yet it has. Yeah. It's really quite that opening shot is really extraordinary.
Every bit as difficult as the other, which is very difficult. Yet it's not a play. It's not a play. The camera isn't stagnant. Yeah, and all of these people and all of these things.
It establishes the energy of the film. Yeah, so.
It's some dynamic. Lovely stuff.
Stuff. I'm sorry, I'm going to miss it, but is it going to stream? Do you know if it's going to stream? I know they're recording it, but do you know if they're going to stream it?
Like they did
a few years ago.
The horrible Doris Day.
Yeah,
incident. Right. But to be honest, I don't know. We should look and see. Probably so, though. Yeah. I think that's pretty standard now.
Well, if it streams, I'll let everybody know on the Facebook page. Anyway, let's get into catching up. We haven't done this for a few weeks, so we're loaded up on movies. I'm going to go through. We got a lot of great stuff from Kino Lorber in particular. It's been a really, really good period for Kino Lorber. We've got some really interesting stuff, and especially from the Kino Lorber Classics, which is usually licensed from the MGM and 20th Century Fox libraries. I'm going to name an exploitation film right now first that comes from the Jezebel collection, The Stewardesses in 3D. This is a 3D Blu-ray from the Jezebel collection, which is distributed by Kino, and it's just, this is a classic 1969 exploitation film. If you hear the word stewardesses, 3D, and 1969, you pretty much know everything that's going to be on this Blu-ray. Telling you a plot forget it. It's just all counterculture, psychosexual 60s kitsch, and it is a lot of fun. There's both a 2D and a 3D version here, and I got to tell you this: I love exploitation films, and this was one I had never seen, and it is an absolute riotous psychedelic hoot. It is a whole lot of fun.
I always love those movies.
Nothing like an exploitation 3D film. We've also got The Frontier by Oren Shai. And this is actually pretty good. Not usually necessarily my cup of tea, but this is a 16mm film that was shot kind of as a sort of a pseudo-Western. It's one of those low budget. It was sort of like one of those low budget. There were a lot of those with Jack Nicholson in the 70s, right? That he, Hang 'em High and like those kinds of westerns. They were sort of like anti-westerns.
Yeah, including one that he directed. I think it was called Going South.
Yeah,
which was kind of
Going South is one of those.
Yeah, Mary Steenburgen. I think it's her first.
That was
film.
The one. That's what I was actually thinking of. Going South. This was made in 2015. It's a little bit of a throwback to those. So it kind of feels like one of those grungy, pulpy, anti-Western type alternative Westerns. But it's fine. It's not my favorite, but I think it has a certain nice texture to it. It's a nice throwback texture. It's worth checking out. If that's exactly your kind of thing. Kelly Lynch is in this. Does a really, really great job.
Haven't seen Kelly Lynch in such a long time.
Really great.
That was before Top Gun, right?
Not this film. This film was just made about a year ago.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen Kelly Lynch in years.
I know. She looks the same. She's great.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah. And then we also have from Kino Lorber, Man Facing Southeast, which is an absolutely terrific classic. If you've never seen Man Facing Southeast, this is from 1986. This is an absolutely fantastic Argentine film. It is a classic. This is the first time that it is on DVD or on Blu-ray. It has not been on since. A very, very influential film, one of the most influential films of the 1980s, foreign films in particular.
Kind of a sci-fi.
Yeah, really, really a cool kind of psychological sci-fi thing. This guy suddenly shows up playing an organ in a psychiatric hospital, and from there you get this whole, claiming to be like an alien visitor, right? And there's a whole interesting, weird science fiction, psychological backstory to it that really unfolds in a fascinating, interesting way. It's really an unusual, great, fascinating, legendary film. Terrific, beautifully shot by Ricardo De Angelis and directed by Eliseo Subiela, who's really not gone on to do a whole lot else, but it's a legendary film, now on Blu-ray, looks absolutely terrific, beautiful, beautiful transfer. And then from the, and then we've got to get this. This is Fritz Lang's Dr. Mabuse, the Gambler.
Oh, yeah.
The whole Mabuse thing is sort of just amazing. If you haven't seen any of the Mabuse films, this is probably a pretty good place to start. This includes the story behind Dr. Mabuse, which is a 3-part documentary that gets into the musical score by Zimmerman, who it gets into it uses the music to sort of dovetail into the elaborate Mabuse world and everything that makes it so sort of legendary and fascinating. This is 1922 silent, of course. It is 4 hours long and worth every single second of it. You need to just see this. It's all about the Fritz Lang genius of staging just the most elaborate, incredibly dark, noirish, classic German. It's just a great movie.
There must be a dozen of them, 10. It's just the Testament of Dr. Mabuse, 1,000 Eyes of Dr. Mabuse.
Yeah, it's where noir begins. It's kind of where, I guess the best way is it's where expressionism meets noir.
Yeah, sort of all through the 30s, but then there's a whole period in the 60s, because you had a lot of these in the 60s too.
You did,
which were kind of mod and kind of happening.
Yeah,
but still,
Anyway,
yeah. So
it's kind of brilliant Weimar cinema, really at its peak, and it is just fantastic. It's really fantastic. So Dr. Mabuse, The Gambler, also includes the original German intertitles, and you can get English intertitles, but The original German intertitles are super cool. And then from the Kino Classics, we got a really bunch of interesting stuff here. Bertolucci's films.
Oh, Luna.
Bertolucci's films have all been kind of caught up because he made them mostly independently back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and a lot of them got all caught up in rights issues. And nobody cared about rights in Italy at the time. It was just make the movie, and it got very messy. And a lot of them are just hung up. So now we're getting them trickling out. Jill Clayburgh in Luna is finally out. It's from 1979. Really interesting Bertolucci film. Not necessarily his best, but beautiful, beautiful cinematography by Storaro, as always. And Jill Clayburgh is great. It is. It's a fairly straightforward drama, primarily looking at a teenage kid and his relationship with his parents.
Matthew Barry. I think, it was Matthew Barry. I remember
Matthew Barry who went on to do The Wraith.
Yeah,
good little actor. Hasn't really gone on to do a whole lot since. I love that Fred Gwynne shows up in this. The idea that Herman Munster was once directed by Bernardo Bertolucci is just awesome to me. So that's a really interesting film. We also have another 3D film here, Gog, which is kind of a weird exploitation Frankenstein mad scientist creation movie from 1954. This is a very early exploitation film. It's mostly hilarious. It is really interestingly shot. It's that weird 50s color that we associate with like the Frankie and Annette movies.
Yeah,
right.
It's very saturated.
Saturated and garish. Yeah. Audio commentary here with some film historians and a restoration demo, and it is it's funny. It's really funny. Gog is sort of like HAL 9000.
It's like it looked like a Dalek for people who know Doctor Who.
Yeah,
it looked like a Dalek. Yeah, so that's what Gog looked like. Yeah,
and then we got some Randolph Scott westerns, Canadian Pacific. And the Caribou Trail, Caribou spelled with O-O, which also has George Gabby Hayes in it. Gabby Hayes shows up in all these things just to sort of grumble and spit little interesting little lines of dialogue. Yeah. And then we've also got last four here, Bad Girl, which is an old Frank Borzage classic from 1931. It's a pre-code film. With James Dunn and Sally Eilers. Very interesting because, it's all about unwed pregnancy and the depression and all that kind of stuff. And it gets into some pretty gritty areas for...
The artwork for these films was sexy as hell. You had some woman, it's like on the box there with just barely wearing some things.
Tight dress. Yeah, you can tell it's all pre-code. Really interesting pre-code subject. So very, very interesting film. Has an audio commentary by Kent Jones. And then The Lodger, which is the feature adaptation or the second version of the silent film originally made by Hitchcock. This is from 1944. It's not as good. It's got Merle O'Brien and George Sanders, directed by John Brom. It's a big cast. A lot of money was thrown at this thing. It's not nearly as interesting as the Hitchcock film.
It's not cut nearly as well as the Hitchcock film. That sort of that sort of loaf of bread scene where he's following the
and the ceiling, walking on the ceiling, shot through the glass. Yeah. It's all there's none of that stuff here. Yeah. But it still has an interesting place, and it's got a really good cast and a lot of stuff on here. A couple of audio commentaries and some featurettes, and that's worth something. And then the last two, The Man Called Noon, which is an interesting kind of revisionist Western as well, starring Richard Crenna and Stephen Boyd when they are past their prime, based on a Louis L'Amour novel and directed by Peter Collinson. Solid 1973 Western. It's another one of those 70s Westerns that just kind of lives in a very particular place. If you like those films, you'll probably enjoy this. I met Louis L'Amour once. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
I met Louis L'Amour. He was in Los Angeles for some reason, and we had a field trip. I was in elementary school, and we went to the Board of Education and sat down in some cold, empty room, and Louis L'Amour came in wearing a bow tie, right? Like one of those bowler ties.
Yeah.
And he sat down, and we got to ask Louis L'Amour questions about the Old West and cowboys and Indians and all that stuff. And I don't remember what he said. I just remember I was really kind of amazed at the time. Because I had just read, I was probably in fourth grade or fifth grade.
Oh, that long? Okay.
Yeah. And I had just read Sitka, which is all about the gold rush in Alaska and everything. And I remember I was just really, really into all that stuff. So, Louis L'Amour, great guy. And then lastly, Angela Lansbury and Michael York in an absolutely wonderful movie you've probably never heard of, Something for Everyone, from 1970, when they were absolutely in their prime. This is, of course, Michael York before Logan's Run.
Yeah.
But still, just one of the great bone structures of all time. Both of them are absolutely delightful here. And it's basically a kind of a murder scandal set among the German aristocracy. A lot of fun. And really, really nicely done. Directed by the great stage director Harold Prince, with a lot of flair. And it's really this is a very, very fun movie. Both of them give really, really great performances. So highly, highly recommended. Something for Everyone. Beautiful new Blu-ray transfer.
I used to love Michael York movies.
Yeah.
They were just always so good.
Well, because he also had that voice, that velvety voice, which another generation got to know from the Austin Powers films.
Oh yeah,
every time he'd show up on the screen.
And of course, the original Island of Dr.
Moreau.
That's him, right?
Yeah.
The original Island of Dr. Moreau.
And of course, the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers.
Oh yeah,
Richard Lester.
What are we going to do? A couple of new ones.
Let's do some new ones. Let's do some new ones.
We've got Snowden here.
Yeah.
Oliver Stone's movie. About. With Joseph Gordon-Levitt, of course, playing Edward Snowden. So, I don't know. This movie came out. I saw it, and I can't tell you how underwhelmed I was.
This was supposed to be a big Oscar contender, big awards contender.
We're supposed to be talking about this movie right now,
and it was off the radar the second it came out. It's almost like Stone has lost his edge a little bit. I don't know what it is.
Well, that went away a long time ago. Going back as far as W or that movie he did about the Twin Towers.
Yeah, World Trade Center.
Yeah, which are all movies that I actually prefer to those movies of his you and I covered 20, 25 years ago, JFK and all of those sort of wild, crazy.
Born on the 4th of July.
So I actually prefer these more considered versions of Oliver Stone's work, where he sort of thinks about it and doesn't just go all crazy left wing,
and doesn't dig out all the psychedelic mixed format natural born killers tricks with the camera. I liked U-Turn though.
I remember loving U-Turn. I remember Jennifer Lopez in that red dress.
Billy Bob Thornton
playing
that Twister
and that thing, and then Sean Penn. So anyway, this one's about the whole Edward Snowden thing. Obviously Oliver's sort of political point of view about these things makes its way into this movie.
Yeah.
So that's what that is so far as the movie is concerned. Bonus features, deleted scenes, Finding the Truth, a Q&A, an interview with Edward Snowden, Oliver Stone, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Shailene Woodley, who plays Snowden's girlfriend in this movie. So, I don't know. It just sort of depends on how you're feeling about Oliver Stone and Oliver Stone films lately, whether or not you want to check that out. There's something here called Closet Monster. I didn't see this when it came out. But I don't know. It struck me as a really interesting looking movie. Stephen Dunn, Connor Jessup, Isabella Rossellini. It says a creative-driven teenager desperate to escape his hometown and haunting memories of his turbulent childhood. We got a DVD here. I just don't know this movie. Strand releasing.
It got a very tiny release.
Did it get a small release?
Yeah, it got a small release. Didn't really.
Lots of bonus features, deleted scenes, interview with the director Stephen Dunn, behind the scenes featurette, the original theatrical trailer, and trailers for other Strand movies. So anyway, I can't say much about it because I just don't know the film.
Max Steel didn't do a whole lot. Andy Garcia shows up for like 5 seconds and no dialogue in Passengers. And,
really?
Yeah.
I missed Passengers.
Yeah, and Andy Garcia, I have to believe that there was a part for him at one point, and instead of that part now, he literally, like a door, near the end of the movie, a door opens and he walks in and that's it. You go, what? Why did Andy Garcia, where'd he go? He was there and now he's gone and now the credits are rolling? How did that happen? It's like, is there going to be a sequel with Andy Garcia? I don't understand. Yeah. Why'd you pay Andy Garcia to just be the guy who comes to the door? I don't get it.
Yeah, that could be the
Anyway, Andy Garcia and Maria Bello, along with Ben Winchell and Anna Villafañe, starring Max Steel, which, at a certain point, the video game superhero genre thing and everything that dovetails from it goes into places that just don't make any sense. And this is about a 16-year-old kid who basically becomes a superhero because he has like some weird energy power with his body. And then he, of course, bumps into some kind of super alien, and there you go. That's the rest of the movie. It wants to sort of be the beginning of a franchise. I don't think it will. I just think it misses something that the Marvel films and even the really bad DC films have, which is like it just feels fabricated without a purpose. All those films sort of have there's some kind of psychological purpose. There's something deeper, you know? There's something about Batman that is connected to all of Bruce Wayne's issues that makes it interesting. There's something about Spider-Man that's connected to all of Peter Parker's issues that make it interesting. There's nothing connected to any issues. Well,
the underlying difference, and this is true of the Marvel and DC comic books too. When there is a character that is developed in the way that that you just described, right? Yeah. An underlying thing, and their superpowers are simply an attribute of this fully developed character, right? Yeah. Tony Stark has all kinds of daddy issues.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? As a result of that, he does all of these great things that gives him these powers. He builds the suit and all this kind of stuff. Yep. But what's going on here are daddy issues.
Yeah, there you go.
And Thor 2, for that matter, has daddy issues. When it's about just the power, somebody gets powers just because they get powers. They're born with powers. They have powers, and the powers of the thing that we're looking at. That's not interesting.
Yeah,
it's just never interesting.
Here's a silly movie, In a Valley of Violence. So Ethan Hawke was in Magnificent Seven reboot, and he was okay. He was sort of one of the only guys who sort of took it seriously and elevated it a little bit. And I guess he's in a Western groove because he and John Travolta show up in this thing, which just did nothing and went nowhere.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
it's not terrible, but it's just it's a mano a mano with two guys who aren't very mono.
Yeah.
Am I being cruel?
Well, yeah. Ethan Hawke is traveling around with this dog, and he's this guy who plainly had a bad time in the Civil War.
Yeah,
and it's just sort of abandoned everything, and he has to travel through this town. John Travolta is the one-legged sheriff marshal, whatever. There's one leg, and things go ugly. And then whatever. It didn't particularly work for me. Does that have anything on it?
Nah, not particularly. It's it's Blu-ray. If you like those actors, I guess whatever. And we had to review a Nick Cage film on the radio yesterday, which was just absolutely insane. And Nick Cage shows up in absolutely everything these days. Paul Schrader made a movie called Dog Eat Dog with Nick Cage and Willem Dafoe, two guys who were really amazing in the 80s and into the 90s, and who've kind of gone a little bit off the radar of late. It's better than what Nick Cage has mostly been doing lately, which is just taking a paycheck to be an overactor. He actually he sort of tries here.
Nick insists on being the lead still.
Yeah.
Now Willem will play second lead, third lead, guy that shows up. He's in the John Wick movie. He'll go to.
He was doing that all the way back to David Lynch films.
Yeah.
Wild at Heart. He shows up just to be weird and scary. You're
opposite Nick Cage.
Exactly.
But for whatever reason, Nick Cage insists on being the lead in a mediocre movie.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's everyone's trying to do the kind of film they used to do here. That's what's going on. Paul Schrader hasn't made a really great film in years and years and years. He's really giving it a try. He just doesn't have enough money and resources to necessarily do it. Cage and Dafoe are fine. It's a crime film. It's there's a kidnapping and a whole mob thing going on, and it's not great Schrader, but it's what he was able to get made. So I'm gonna kind of cut him a little bit of a pass here, just because everybody is doing better than they have done in years on this. So is it good? No. But is it better than the last 3 or 4 films that Nick Cage made? Yes. Is it better than the last 3 or 4 or 5 films that Schrader made? Yes. Does Willem Dafoe embarrass himself? No. So it's a step in the right direction.
A movie that would have been a grown-up movie at some point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got American Honey here, which is another movie that I thought we would be talking about
Man, I don't like this movie.
I like this movie. You were the one who really. But you know what? You turned out to be right because we're not talking about this movie here doing the award. Andrea Arnold film. Andrea Arnold,
who I like normally.
Well, that Fastminder movie she made. A Fastminder movie.
She made. Was it Red Road?
And
then she made the really interesting Wuthering Heights.
The adaptation of Wuthering Heights.
This interracial adaptation of Wuthering Heights, which I thought was really fascinating.
She shot 133 and mostly in black and white, all that kind of stuff. So this is a sort of like a road movie about this particular sort of, strain in society of these sort of thrown away kids, and they sort of aggregate together to sell magazines on the road, selling magazines, which is a real thing, a real world.
And I didn't know this was even a thing, and I allow that it is a thing. I recognize that. These kids who sort of fought. It's sort of, there's a little bit of Oliver Twist in this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a gypsy thing, which is that there are these kinds of Fagin-like people, and in here it's a woman played by
what's her name here?
Yeah, she's like Lisa Marie Presley's daughter.
Sasha Lane.
Okay,
yeah.
So she's Lisa Marie Presley's daughter. She's Elvis Presley's granddaughter. She plays the madam of this gang, and
which I may have gotten wrong. The other young woman I think is Sasha Lane.
Sasha Lane is the lead.
That is the lead.
She's the lead.
Okay.
So anyway, the madam, I forget her name. Anyway, she's
Riley Keough.
That's it.
That's her name.
Her name.
Yeah.
So she's Elvis's granddaughter.
Yeah.
Anyway, she and I don't want to hang that around her neck because she's a good actress.
Oh, she's
terrific.
She and Sasha, and interestingly, Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, that's my problem.
This is one time I've been poking him. I said this on the show when we reviewed this movie. I've been poking him for 15 years. Yeah. Pretty hard for 15 years.
I'm still poking him. He's
actually pretty good in this movie. It's a long, very, very, very slow movie that's not actually really about anything. So you kind of have to be into that sort of European floaty kind of thing.
Yeah.
This particular Blu-ray digital HD does not have a great deal on it. I do note that our Film Week colleague Justin Chang, film critic for Los Angeles, has on wild and astonishingly beautiful.
I've been ribbing him for weeks over the fact that these two films that I think are just so overrated he loves, which is this and Tony Erdmann.
Oh, Tony Erdmann.
I just can't stand either of them.
He liked Man Down too, which is Shia again.
Yeah, I don't like Shia.
So anyway, American Honey.
Anyhow. So let me rock through a couple here, and then I'll let you take the rest. Mechanic. Resurrection, another Mechanic film. We got it on Blu-ray and a 4K Ultra HD. This is with Jason Statham doing the thing all over again. Tommy Lee Jones shows up to be the bad guy. Jessica Alba's in this basically just to show off her body. Yeah. And Michelle Yeoh is in here for no reason whatsoever. She doesn't get a chance to act. She doesn't do any martial arts.
They did not do with the reboot of that series what I hoped might have been done.
One of the worst films of the year. This is the stupidest movie. I hate it. There's no reason to see it on Blu-ray or even 4K. It's just an insipid, pointless, dumb action movie with there's a whole kind of kidnapping and forget it. It's just Statham with a gun going after the bad guys and trying to get revenge. It's the same old thing you've seen a million times. All you need to know to enjoy this movie is if there's somebody on a boat, that boat is going to blow up in about 10 minutes. Every single boat in this movie is a death trap. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And boats don't blow up like that.
No.
They don't.
No. It's as if the gasoline for the boat is all just like on the deck.
Yeah. Truly, at this point, maybe in the 1960s and like about 1973, we could buy into that when it was an episode of Charlie's Angels or the Rockford Files where the boat blows up and you see all the people on board diving off and flying into the water. But when a boat blows up, it doesn't blow up like you just had a pyrotechnic crew plant pieces of dynamite all over it to make splinters of wood. Forget it. It's horrible.
Ludicrous.
Anyway, hate that movie. Also on 4K. I'm really, this is just so sad. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. This is Tim Burton desperately trying to do a Harry Potter type thing, and it's just too much CGI and not enough plot, and it just really is not very interesting in the least. I find it really, really sad and misbegotten. It has no charm.
Even the great Eva Green,
who plays Miss Peregrine,
could not save this film.
No, it just can't. But it does look and sound great. So I'll say that. The 4K in this is really, really terrific. I mean, they really, really poured some effort into that. So I don't like the movie, but I can't take anything away from how it looks. Lots of extras on here, basically all just featurettes on how it was made, plus a music video.
Yeah, there it is. Got a couple?
Yep.
Over here. When the Bow Breaks. These movies are a lot of fun. Yeah. And they've become a little genre of themselves. Generally speaking, what I'm talking about are these sort of African-American-centric thriller, mystery sort of movies that have all the exact same cover. And that cover almost always has Morris Chestnut on it.
Oh, my gosh.
He's either the guy or the other guy or the guy who's going to save her, who it is, and Sonale, whoever it happens to be. And this one's Regina Hall and somebody named Jazz Sinclair, who I've never seen before in anything. But you know what? She's so hot in a red dress, I just don't care. Which is the problem of this movie. This is one. This is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Remember The Hand That Rocks the Cradle years ago?
Rebecca De Mornay.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. This is basically that couple. Regina Hall, Morris Chestnut, very successful, can do everything except have a baby. They hire a surrogate.
Aww.
Who's crazy.
Of course.
And just kind of cause all kinds of problems.
There was a little indie called, was it The Babysitter? About 6-7 months ago that was the same kind of deal,
But what I will say about these, these are mainstream popular movies that don't really have much of a run theatrically, but they live in a particular space.
They do.
Streaming
and they do well.
on television. And
it's worth pointing out, it is not exclusively black audiences that make these things successful.
No.
They really do have a crossover appeal. I have ribbed Morris Chestnut for so many years, but it's only because I'm a really big fan.
Yeah.
I really think Morris Chestnut is a big potential star. He just hasn't made necessarily the choices. He basically started out playing being the black Jack Lemmon, right? He's the guy in all those movies. It's always women problems, and he's just kind of this weird, goofy guy.
He's got some nutty friend giving him bad advice.
Oh, and all those posters, it's always Morris Chestnut with his eyes up, looking up, and some woman with her arms folded.
I'm actually doing it right now.
And then he transitioned in Heist. Did you see Heist? The De Niro thing?
Dark. Very good in that movie.
Really good. I mean, it's not a great movie. De Niro's a kind of a mob boss, a gambling chieftain, and Morris Chestnut is his enforcer. And he's brutal, and he's dark.
And looks it.
And he really puts on an edge. And since then, he's now become like the black Fred McMurray.
Yeah.
Like all those Fred McMurray noir things. Yeah. That's who he is now.
That's who he is. And then, of course, that television show. A handsome Morris Chestnut. This is a lot of fun. Deleted scenes, commentary with the director.
I still think, like Morris, if you're listening, you can still you can step it up and not just be. You can win an Oscar someday, man. You just need to find that thing and
with that chin line, he's going to be fine.
Yeah. Another 4K here, Morgan, from producer Ridley Scott. Wait a minute, who directed this? I only see producer Ridley Scott. Who directed this? No, it's his son.
Yeah.
When you're Ridley Scott's kid and you direct a movie and they promote it that your dad produced it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, I'd have more pride than that.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't let him do it. I was like, no.
You're riding Dad's coattails.
Yeah.
Look, you can't be Ridley Scott's kid and not have some kind of talent. He's got, a couple of sons who've directed movies now, and they look good. They just don't have any kind of depth to them. They need to step it up and kind of get away from Dad and Uncle's hyper-stylized sensibilities. Anyway, Luke Scott directed this, and it is basically a thriller. Kate Mara is perfectly fine in it. It's good cast, Jennifer Jason Leigh and Paul Giamatti, a lot of really interesting people here. But it's just it's another one of those Frankenstein allegories. It's Morgan is basically like maybe not a monster, but she's an evolutionary monster. But it's still the same cautionary tale about science and don't let science get ahead of you. And which is kind of like what zombie movies are in a sense too. A lot of style. Plot doesn't really work quite well, but it's not terrible. It is decent enough that if you as maybe a rental. Really, it's a good looking 4K. So
yeah, one of those. Yeah. Goat. A debut film, I think, for Nick Jonas.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
I got really mixed feelings about this.
Me too. When it came out, James Franco also pops up in the movie. The film is about these two brothers. One of them is beaten badly.
It's basically it's a hazing movie.
Yeah, and then he goes to college. His brother's pledges the same fraternity as his brother.
Yeah,
and then this hazing sort of starts,
which is like a 45-minute sequence of just relentless torture.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is above and beyond.
After he had already suffered this sort of assault thing that happened, and they're getting into some sort of complicated psychological territory,
which I give him credit,
which I appreciate. Yeah. But then there's the stuff that we simply have to see, experience, watch. Now, Nick Jonas does a good job.
I just feel like I felt like it just got into excess at a certain point. It was just like it was almost like you're waterboarding the audience. And look, I'm not sure that really...
You and I are old enough to have seen movies that Lords of Discipline.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Keith David.
And Timothy Hutton.
And Timothy Hutton,
David Keith.
David Keith. I've been doing that for 35 years.
Yeah, swapping those two Keith David is the one that says to Ben Stiller, is that the Frank or the Beans? It's something about Mary. So anyway.
So many of these. Nevertheless, anyway, interesting film. Nothing particularly interesting in terms of special features on this DVD release.
Tim, we talked about this yesterday, and it's already on DVD. Hickey. Yeah. This is just... I'm going to try to be nice to this. This is from Gravitas. It wants to be a low-budget version of Office Space, and they make the mistake of putting a weird little tagline on the cover, "Today is going to suck." The joke is too easy. If you're watching this movie, it is.
Yeah.
Look, here's the problem with Hickey. It's well-intentioned. It's decently acted, but it's a first-time, film for Alex Grossman, who wrote and directed it. So I'll cut him a little bit of slack. But this is the problem is this is a kid who works in a car stereo place that's going to get shut down. And you even said on the radio yesterday, you're like, it deserves to get shut down.
Keep down.
But the thing is, he's got an MIT scholarship, but he doesn't want to go to MIT because he has to leave the job where he's in love with this girl that he works with.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but seriously, you slap him around, go to MIT, tell her you love her, you'll see her next summer, the movie's over.
Yeah.
They somehow squeeze all kinds of teen angst out of this thing that just doesn't make any sense.
Well, they attempt to anyway.
Yeah.
But they don't quite get there, if you ask me. I got another one of those sort of Western films, Trace Atkins, Kim Coates, Judd Nelson. It's called Stagecoach. I happen to have seen this. I don't know why I saw it, but it popped up and I popped it in and I saw it. I will say this about it. It's a pretty brutal, briskly shot, well-made film in terms of the way it looks and the way it sounds and the way these characters look. If it were 15, 20, maybe 30 years ago, and I saw this movie, I would have thought this is a pretty bracing Western. It isn't 15, 20, 30 years ago, so it's basically a contemporary Western that it works in the way that it works. But you really got to kind of be into this material to thoroughly enjoy it. Bonus feature, some behind the scenes stuff. It's pretty much all you're going to get there. But always interesting to see Judd Nelson. And some of those old actors from back in the day, and what they're doing. Hey, he's looking good and playing cowboys. That's life.
A couple more here that I can just dismiss real quickly. Storks in 3D. Gosh, this is a terrible animated film. It's an animated film. This is from Warner Brothers. It comes with Ultraviolet and a handful of behind-the-scenes features and outtakes and yada yada yada. The usual deleted scene stuff. It takes place in a future where the storks are going to stop delivering babies because they want to be more FedEx and deliver other things that are more lucrative. And there's a girl who grew up there because she was misdelivered and never found her true parents, so she was raised by the storks. And then we dovetail from there into some big epic adventure that the little stork that needs to. I don't know. It just everybody's got some issue they got to resolve, and there's just way too many set pieces, and it's way too busy, and it's really 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 irritating, and it gave me a headache. Bridget Jones's baby.
Oh, you bet.
Everybody is way, way past their prime in this. Bridget Jones should not be having a baby. Bridget Jones should be taking a vacation in the Caymans and not giving us any more drama.
They squozed 2 movies out of that. They couldn't just be satisfied.
Right. Kids, she's having a baby. Is the father Patrick Dempsey or is it Colin Firth? They're both so cute and just awesome.
Yeah,
no.
She's too old to be having a baby. They're too old to be daddies.
Stop it, everybody. Just put this movie to bed.
I got this one, 9 Lives. And again, look, if it were 1986, this would have been a neat little movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a guy who gets switched into the body of his cat.
Oh,
a stuffy
dear.
businessman finds himself trapped inside the body of his cat.
Oh, hell.
What are you going to do? Kevin Spacey, Jennifer Gardner, Christopher Walken. I know that this is meant to be a fun family sort of movie that's for the kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes that's even a problem.
Yeah.
And I really don't understand what Kevin Spacey is doing in this movie. In this DVD Blu-ray.
I don't know.
What's to come with the Blu-ray? Letting the Cat Out of the Bag, Making of 9 Lives. Russian for herding cats. I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah, well, anyway. So Clea Duvall, who is a very good actress, she acts in and writes and directs. This is her directing debut. The Intervention, which is well-intentioned. It is a little bit of a kind of a wannabe Cassavetes, wannabe Return to the Secaucus 7 John Sayles type film. A bunch of friends who all get together in a little vacation house because everyone wants to they want to have an intervention with with 2 of their friends who are married because they have this horrible toxic marriage and everybody wants to tell them, you guys need to get divorced. And, of course, I don't need to tell you where this goes. It winds up basically being that everybody else needs the intervention more than they do. They learn to love each other again, and everybody else's lives just get completely ripped to shreds as a result. Really, really well-intentioned, probably a little overwritten and over-directed, but I have a soft spot for it because the cast is so good, and I like all these
Jason
actors.
Ritter.
Clea Duvall is really good. Melanie Linsky is terrific. Natasha Lyonne is as good as I've seen her in years. Jason Ritter is really, really good. And Alia Shawkat, who shows up in all these interesting films, is kind of a quirky girl. She's the odd one out. She's the girl who isn't really a friend here. She's just a girlfand that's tagged along with this one guy.
Observing all the insanity.
And she's a little bit of a free spirit, right? She doesn't really wear a bra, and she'll talk about anything. And, so there's always that person, the outsider, who's like the audience's eyes into this. Like, you people are messed up. But so for all the cliches and whatnot, I give it some kudos, and I think Clea Duvall should make more movies. That's the bottom line.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, big fan.
For sure. Coming Through the Rye, it's this movie about a boy who has an obsession. It's set in like 1969. It's about a boy who has an obsession with Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield, J.D. Salinger. He decides to leave school and go on a sort of Holden Caulfield-esque trek to find J.D. Salinger.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I think we lost J.D. Salinger not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think he passed away. What's interesting about this film is, of course, in the film he finds J.D. Salinger. And nobody ever really actually did. JD really he never did stop being a recluse. Yeah. In the film they would like to examine that. Look, I suppose if you have a particular sort of obsession with that book, Catcher in the Rye, and with Salinger and all of that, this might be an interesting little movie for you. I'm a big fan of that book, but I don't think I was ever quite as obsessed with it as lots of young people became when they first read Catcher in the Rye. Good book is what I felt, but whatever.
Yeah. So Kicks is a decent little film that really didn't get a lot of traction. You should check it out. Kicks is on Blu-ray now with Ultraviolet on it as well. Mahershala Ali, who is the man of the moment. We were talking about him.
Moonlight,
who is also in Hidden Figures. Does very well in there. And he's also the bad guy for the first half of Luke Cage, if you haven't watched that on Netflix.
Yeah.
He is in everything now and deserves to be.
And plays that range just beautifully.
You know what? What I love about this year for him is that he has played lovable guys and hateful guys and kind of hatefully lovable and lovably hateful guys you're ambivalent about. He's played the whole range, so he's not going to get into that place like so many actors do, where you have to fight for a few years to prove that you can be either the villain or the good guy to get out of it. It's like everyone knows his range now.
Yeah.
So
he's right out of the box.
Right out of the box. He can do anything that he wants, and that's pretty great. So he is in this as well. He is not the star, of course, but he's in it as well, and he's really good. This is the story about a 15-year-old kid looking for shoes like as a status symbol, and what happens in the pursuit of those shoes, and the acquisition
Air
of those shoes.
Jordans and it was an interesting little movie.
It is an interesting little movie because the shoes are a metaphor, you know, and the search for the shoes makes it kind of this really interesting, like urban fairy tale allegory.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting little movie.
It gets a little dark, gets a little brutal, but to be honest with you, I prefer this to the one that everybody was talking about a year or so ago. That was set here in L.A.
Oh, I know which one you mean.
That's escaping me right now.
That one Stephen Daldry directed?
The same guy who directed The Wood.
Yes.
But this one was a little bit better to me.
Yeah. Well, anyway, directed by Justin Tipping, and it's a good movie. It's worth checking out. It kind of fell off everyone's radar just a tiny bit, but it is really, really worth checking out. Kicks. They aren't just shoes, on Blu-ray with Ultraviolet.
Greater, which is a true story about one of those it's one of those sports stories, one of those sort of like Invincible that Mark Wahlberg did a couple of years ago. This one's about a guy who always wanted to play on the Arkansas Razorback football team and walked on and made the team. Good for him. And contributes to the whole thing and makes sports movie. David Hunt directed it. It's a pretty good movie. Bonus features, deleted scenes, and a writer-director commentary. This movie actually has quite a lot of production value for a fairly small film. Because big sports movies require a certain amount of production value. He gets there with this. This is better than you might think.
From the world of low-budget attempts at making kind of films that are even creepier, more horrific than Saw, comes a thing called Bloodshock. This is from Unearthed Films. The subtitle of this, or the overtitle here, is American Guinea Pig. Yeah. Anyway, this comes with a CD and a Blu-ray and a DVD and a whole bunch of other stuff to make you feel like you're getting your money's worth out of the just despicable, horrible, disgusting torture that you see in this movie. This is basically a guy who just winds up in not knowing how he wound up in some horrible, horrible psychotic hospital to be used for experiments, indeed, as a guinea pig, and it's torture porn. But it thinks that it's artsy torture porn. So I don't really, there's a ton of extras on this. None of it to really any great end. If you love this kind of film, you will go nuts for this because they really go above and beyond. But it is not my cup of tea. And then the great Gilly Hopkins. This is another one of those movies that just drive me crazy. It just tries to be way too cute and funny all at the same time. It won the Truly Moving Picture Award from the Heartland Film Festival, and that is my first sign that I need to run for the doors. Yeah. This has everybody's just acting way too sweet and saccharine here. Kathy Bates is just being the sweet grandma, and Julia Stiles is just trying way too hard, and Octavia Spencer is she's just being the sweet, lovable sage, the wise Southern black woman. It's just, it's the female version of what Spike called the magical Negro.
Yeah, the magical. Yeah. Look, those movies, and like the one I'm holding here, Middle School.
Yeah,
I have to assume that these movies have an audience.
Yeah,
a sort of family-oriented audience.
People that don't want their buttons pushed.
And live in a certain zone, and they want the answers, and they want it to come out the way they want it to come out. This one's called Middle School. It's based on the best-selling series of books written by James Patterson. Excuse me. It's about a kid who transfers to a school, and there are all these rules at the school, and has this principal, and you have to go by the rules, and he refuses. Ultimately, the books are about creativity, about encouraging creativity. Yes, can't hate that. No. This movie is really irritating, though. So
it is.
What can I say about that? It's just really irritating movie. And Sully.
That's our last new movie of this stretch. Yeah, Sully. Boy,
a movie that we were supposed to be talking about right now too, in terms of the awards.
I have a feeling, and I know you and I probably have the same reservations about this movie. I have a feeling that this may pop back on the radar at awards time, because I think there is an older contingent of the Academy. That is still connected to Clint and all of his concerns.
And Tom, for that
matter. And I think this may garner enough of their support to kind of creep in there. Because we have up to 10 nominees for Best Picture, I could see this being the one that just barely nudges its way in.
Yeah, but you're fully aware that it's not likely over La La Land.
Yeah, no,
even
no.
Moonlight for that matter. That this movie is going to to win.
La La Land, Moonlight, and Manchester are the three that will be contending, and I think Arrival will be sort of the gravity or the Mad Max of this year because of all the technical expertise in it. I think that's the one that'll creep in because it gets a lot of. But other than those four, I don't see anything really contending.
Yeah, because frankly, after you do that four, and then you like again you throw in a fifth. Yeah, which might be this Sully. We're still talking about Sully. Yeah. After that, I think we're done.
Yeah, no, those are the four. Really, I mean, if we're talking about anything contending for the Oscars this year, with the exception of individual achievements like. Like Jackie for Best Actress, and there are a few other things, but
screenplays and whatnot.
Yeah, but I think generally the film, the big heavy hitters, you'll see the top nominees. It'll be those three. It'll be La La, Moonlight, Manchester, and Arrival.
Well, Tom Hanks is, I'm sure, a member of the Academy. And
he's an Academy governor now too.
You know who he's voting for? La La Land. I can already tell. I can tell from the way he roams around town, gushing over La La Land.
Is he really?
He roams around. He gushes over it all the time. Rightfully so. Fantastic movie. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you're just giving it up. Anyway, whatever.
That's funny.
But it's kind of neat. But you know what's smart about it?
Yeah.
He's letting himself off the hook.
You know what I still remember? I remember so well. And the thing about Sully, just to let it go, is it's a perfectly fine movie about a great guy, but they sort of have to force the drama. You don't see the landing until midway through the film. It's like it's about an hour into the movie before they actually show it to you. Most of this is about the investigation. Yeah. Where they kind of gin up this artificial drama. Did you really have to do that? Yeah. Was there another way? It's like, well, I think we all know he did.
Yeah, yeah.
So why are you giving me this sort of hindsight drama where there wasn't any?
Yeah, yeah.
They're trying to make a story where there isn't one.
And they tell it, and to stretch it out, they do that Rashomon thing, where we see that event 15 different ways from 15 different angles, and I'm like, okay, you guys are milking this a little bit.
It's a little too much.
It is what it is.
All right, so I'm going to hit some of these. I'm going to hit these shout titles first, and then we'll go through the Twilight Time titles that came out. We have a couple of batches of Twilight Time that are absolutely terrific. But Shout has given us some great classic films. Shout is releasing a lot of really interesting stuff now from their classics line. And we've got Dead Ringers, the David Cronenberg film. Yeah. If you have this on Blu-ray, on a DVD from Criterion, don't get rid of it. Don't get rid of your Criterion. You're going to want to double dip because the Criterion on DVD still has amazing extras. But this has some great stuff too. This is on Blu-ray from Shout, and it's got new audio commentary with the author of The Artist is Monster, the cinema of David Cronenberg, William Beard, who has wonderful, wonderful insight. And then you also have Jeremy Irons doing audio commentary. So it's absolutely terrific. And then there's a preferred aspect ratio, a 2K scan of this on the second disc. Now, that's interesting because Cronenberg apparently prefers 1/66 for this film. So you get both versions on two different discs. I don't really know why he prefers 1/66, but, there it is.
It was released 1/66.
Was it?
Yeah.
See, I didn't remember that.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, you get both versions here, and interviews with Peter Suskitsky, who was the DP and the effects artist, and it's all very, very solid, very good looking film, beautiful Blu-ray. You also get Cronenberg's Rabid collector's edition, which is also loaded with extras, including an audio commentary from the same William Beard, and a lot of interesting archival stuff. This is a 2K scan to Blu-ray as well, and I am a lot less a fan of Rabid. I think it's a little bit overrated. I had forgotten that Ivan Reitman was an executive producer on this because, of course...
That's like late 70s, mid-70s Cronenberg.
Every Canadian knew every other Canadian at that time and worked on their movies. So Ivan Reitman and Cronenberg together, well...
It was like pre-scanners and all that kind of stuff,
And then Dreamscape, a movie that I really enjoyed at the time. Joseph Rubin, talking about Hand That Rocks the Cradle earlier. This was before Joseph Rubin made Hand That Rocks the Cradle. He made Dreamscape with Dennis Quaid and Kate Capshaw. Dennis Quaid disappearing into, dreams, all these weird...
It was kind of a neat movie. I remember high concept for sure. And cutting edge special effects for the day was
no CGI.
No CGI. No practical.
All practical, and there's stop motion animation and some really, really interesting stuff in here. So from an effects standpoint, This was a really interesting film. Great supporting cast with, Eddie Albert, Max von Sydow, Christopher Plummer, and a terrific score by Maurice Jarre, which is really, really good. So one of those interesting genre movies of the 80s. And then lastly here from Shout, movie I just love. I am so happy this is out in a collector's edition from the Shout Select line. To Live and Die in L.A., one of William Friedkin's very, very best films. This film, speaking again about Willem Dafoe, who this was what made him. Yeah. He is so fearsome in this. He is just terrifying. This film does two things that are absolutely amazing. I'm going to assume that everyone's seen this and that the spoiler revelation that I'm about to tell, which gives you time to fast forward a few seconds, is not going to shock you. But to take the main character, played by William Peterson, and kill him off at a point where it's like, you don't do that in movies. Yeah. What, are you kidding me? Yeah, you do. In this one, you do. And driving the wrong way on an LA freeway.
And John,
awesome.
At the end of that movie, when John Pacquiao puts on those shades. And we realize that he has become, it's like, oh wow, man,
it's such a dark, gritty, awesome movie. This is
John
kind of like
Turturro.
I feel like
a lot of great cast.
I kind of feel like this is where French Connection meets Miami Vice, right? Yeah. It's kind of like this is where Michael Mann and Friedkin, come together, and it is just a great movie. It is a really, really great movie. Just beautifully done. Really, really terrific film. So let's talk about some Twilight Time stuff.
Okay, what do we got here?
We've got, Twilight Time keeps releasing a lot of great old Woody Allen movies. They keep it up. Stardust Memories. Beautiful. Remember, all this stuff you can only get at TwilightTimeMovies.com. TwilightTimeMovies.com, that's where you go. Or you can also go to ScreenArchives.com. That's where you buy these. You do not get them anywhere else. So this is exclusively from those places. They come, all of them, with isolated scores and some other extras. But Stardust Memories, Woody Allen's first really super cool, serious black and white movie, makes fun of his old funny movies. This is a really, really cool Woody Allen film. Pays homage to Fellini, clearly a tip to 8.5, but it's just great. It's absolutely great. If you're collecting all those great Woody Allen movies on Blu-ray, you got to throw in Stardust Memories.
Can't hurt yourself there. The Bullet Train, which was the film that the 1994 film that was, I think, was Speed. Was more or less based on. So obviously, right. Speed is a bus, and this is a train. Yeah. But it's the same sort of theme for this movie. Outstanding movie, 1975. It's a different sort of concept than Speed, but you have the same sort of thing. The train can't stop; it can't fall below a certain speed, or the whole damn thing is going to blow up. So it's a real nail-biting thriller. Special features include an isolated music track, as well as a behind-the-scenes documentary.
Fantastic. Fabulous.
Twilight Time. You can only get these on Twilight Time.
Only at TwilightTimeMovies.com or ScreenArchives.com. They're all absolutely terrific. And it's all licensed stuff, and they just do a great job. Here's three real interesting, real quickly. Nicholas Nickleby. This is a 2002 production of Nicholas Nickleby, which has been done a number of times, British television and elsewhere. It's not particularly great. It's directed by Douglas McGrath. It's a little bit not quite dark enough for me to feel like it's classic. Classic Dickens, but it's decent. It's not. It doesn't completely. I mean, a lot of people really, really love this movie. So it's okay for me, but I'm not a. Douglas McGrath also made Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow. So I mean, he has a feel for that kind of the milieu, but it's still a little bit too sunny. Christopher Plummer is very, very good, but otherwise it's not the. I mean, it's fine. Also has Jim Broadbent in it for people who are a fan of his. The Three Worlds of Gulliver. This is a bit of a kind of a cult classic these days. From 1960. Really just very bright, shiny, kind of a low-budget special effects version of the Gulliver tale. This is... It's a little bit in the same vein as a lot of the fairy tale stuff that was made around that same time, like Tom Thumb, and there's sort of a whole subgenre of these live action things, and they all seem to star people who are migrating from musicals. In any case, this one is it's kind of right in the middle there. The real reason to see this is because it has great special effects by Ray Harryhausen. It's all for the Harryhausen special effects. The actual story itself and the execution isn't anything really to scream about. But a great transfer. Twilight Time did a fantastic job. Harryhausen looks really good in it. And then here's a film I'm very mixed on. I'll let you know that it's there. An aging Humphrey Bogart in The Barefoot Contessa.
Yeah.
I really, really despise this film. I think it is just a monstrous bore. However, I am alone in that. It's written and directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who, of course, is legendary. And Ava Gardner is, the icon that just sort of is right there, and she's this goddess of this movie. And I just think the whole thing is a great big melodramatic pile of goop. I really don't like it at all. But again, I'm alone in that. It has an audio commentary with a couple of film historians, and stills, and a trailer. So if you like the big goopy old melodramas and Humphrey Bogart looking way too old for his age because he smoked too many cigarettes, go ahead and knock yourselves out.
I've got a couple over here that we'll go through, including Gregory Peck's 1956 Moby Dick. John Huston.
So good.
So good. Which I think isn't it
scripted by Ray Bradbury.
Ray Bradbury. I think Orson Welles gives that big speech.
Yeah,
the Reverend speech. He gets Houston to do that. Great story about that. I think he had to get directed to do it. So Richard Basehart, of course, also in the film. This is we're still doing the Twilight Time series.
Yes, this is all still Twilight Time.
And the special features include an isolated score audio commentary with film historians, with a couple of film historians, and a beached whale recreating the unique color of Moby Dick, which was a particular thing about this particular movie. So we have that. Boston Strangler, the 1968 film.
Which is not bad, actually.
Which is not bad at all. Tony Curtis actually quite good in this movie. Richard Fleischer film, of course. About the Boston Strangler series. Actually quite interesting.
Pretty accurate too, if I remember.
This was when realism started to be a thing.
Yeah.
In films like this.
Late 60s, early 70s.
This, in Cold Blood, the Truman Capote adaptation, this is when that started to come.
In the Heat of the Night, kind of
where a lot of
that.
Those two. Lots of special features here, including another isolated music track. I love that about these Twilight Times, by the way. Audio commentary with a couple of film historians again, and Friedkin and on Richard Fleischer, a commentary from William Friedkin on Richard Fleischer for the thing. So interesting stuff from Twilight Time. Let me get to Moscow on the Hudson.
Oh, I love Moscow on the Hudson.
This is the movie that actually Robin Williams, obviously, and was it Yakov Smirnoff?
Yakov Smirnoff, yeah.
Early Yakov.
Actually,
Smirnoff?
a whole bunch of guys who had all defected at the time because the Soviet Union still was a thing. Defection in the movie, he defects, and then there are all these Russian actors who had actually defected.
Really, sort of an interesting thematic Paul Mazursky film, of course.
Great.
At the time, and Robin Williams really good in the movies. A really sort of a poignant movie.
Yeah.
I saw it the other day. I was watching television or whatever, watching this movie. That saxophone music and all that stuff. And in any case, isolated score again, audio commentary with our same film historians, and a commentary track with the great Paul Mazursky.
And Bill Nunn has a great part in that film too.
Oh yes,
if you remember, Bill Nunn is the guy working in the department store when he comes up and he says, "I want to defect." And Bill Nunn says, "You can't do that in here, man." Hysterical. So good. Late Bill Nunn, who just passed away last year. So good. Interesting little kind of quasi-noir here from 1968. Pretty Poison. This was a directing debut for Noel Black, who didn't have much of a career thereafter, really. But it's an interesting little noir with Tuesday Weld as the femme fatale who tries to get Tony Perkins to be part of her nasty little murder scam. It's got good mood. It's got a good kind of neo-noir feel to it. And it dates really quite well, I have to be honest. So, we're talking about that realism period again, late 60s. Great isolated score here by Johnny Mandel. We talk about Johnny Mandel, great music from the era. Good stuff.
I Want to Live, 1958, Susan Hayward. Of course, in a Robert Wise film, early Robert Wise film, more or less, this is not long after the Earth stood still in the couple of those, about a woman, and this is an edgy story for 1958, if you think about it. Kind of a woman, kind of a, what we might call an easy woman, a free spirit, living her life, gets involved with a couple of guys, they kill somebody. They decide to rat her out, even though she was not involved with it, and it's about her going to prison and facing the death penalty. That's really pretty, and it kind of gave a little boost to Susan Hayward's career there at the back end, because she wasn't playing particularly beautiful in this thing. Again, a lovely isolated score and audio commentary.
And then we have Gran Bolito, which is a just weird kind of giallo's exploitation film fusion from Italy to America. Italian director, and basically all you need to know is that Shelley Winters is in her exploitation mode here. Now, there's a period there where Shelley Winters, after her prime, around about from the late 60s to the late 70s, where all she does is play crazy mothers, crazy grandmothers, crazy sorority moms, crazy like witch coven moms. She's just whacked out, and she's just flaunting her craziness, and she's doing a Nick Cage basically. At that particular time, she was the Nick Cage of her era, and this is one of those. All takes place in this really creepy old Italian apartment building from the 1930s, and Max von Sydow even shows up in this again. I like it because Rita Tushingham is in it, but really it's 60s and 70s era kitsch, and it has an interesting audio commentary with some film historians, and that's about it. I think the only if you like, and it really is still a giallo film. It's an American exploitation film, but it's a giallo film. It's pretty nasty at a certain point. I think if you like giallo, and if you like those kinds of sort of horror films, then it gets into a really weird, creepy area. I won't tell you anything else about it. And The Keys of the Kingdom is a pretty terrific film. I would really, really highly recommend this. One of Gregory Peck's very, very best performances. Very, very timely. This is all about a Scottish missionary in China, and it's beautifully directed by John Stahl from a script by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and Nunnally Johnson, who are both amazing screenwriters. Mankiewicz was the godfather of the whole project. He kind of shepherded it as a producer, and a lot of that is explained and discussed on the audio commentary. It gets into the very, very interesting backstory of this, but it is it has a certain pearlesque buck quality to it. The Westerner sort of trying to acclimate to world events transpiring in an Asian nation. It is not condescending. It is not cloying. There is no sort of white savior aspect to this, as many people have become annoyed in recent years. It is a really interesting character study. Gregory Peck is really at the peak of his abilities. And
very young Roddy McDowall.
Yeah, young Roddy McDowall. Vincent Price is in this too. It's a terrific cast. So it is really, really worth checking out. And that is The Keys of the Kingdom. And we will wrap up with a couple of docs then.
We're going to move on to a few.
Let's just hit a couple of docs and then we'll wrap the show up.
Peter, Paul, and Mary, 50 Years with Peter, Paul, and Mary speaks for itself. Beautiful footage here, a lot of black and white footage, including Peter, Paul, and Mary singing at the March on Washington. Which is just sort of extraordinary in and of itself. Beautifully recorded, both the music and the visuals there. Roseanne for President, which is really has very little to do with anything to do with the president election of recent.
We forget that she actually did run for president.
Yes, she actually ran for president. But a lot of interesting comedians here. This is mostly really about a sort of backdoor look at Roseanne's life. You have Michael Moore and Rosie O'Donnell and Sandra Bernhard and the Smothers Brothers and many people who have been with her over across the arc of her career. Some extra scenes and featurettes and stuff like that. Black in America since MLK and Still I Rise. An interesting PBS documentary hosted by Dr. Lewis Henry on Blu-ray. With Jesse Jackson Jr. As a guest, among other people. This is interesting just in the context of today.
Anything that Gates does. Yeah. Gates is like he's the professor, right? He just he walks you through this stuff in such an amazingly... It's like a story, He guides you so beautifully.
It's a PBS documentary, so quite beautiful. Good. On Blu-ray, nothing particular interesting in terms of additional information.
And then we have 3 World War II anniversary docs. 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor from the History Channel. This is a 2-disc documentary, basically, that just revisits that in its entirety and all of its just horrible, horrible details. Difficult to watch still, but very, very good. Then we also have Pearl Harbor 75th anniversary commemorative documentary series from Mill Creek, which it takes a somewhat different attack on it. This is longer. It's more, but it's basically a collection of 8 separate documentaries, each of them having a different angle on it. So it's not as condensed as the History Channel thing. Probably less emotionally devastating to watch, but both of them very, very good. And then this is not a doc, but it's interesting to throw it in. It's a miniseries called Hiroshima, the complete miniseries event. As long as we are on the subject of the war in the Pacific, this is also out from Mill Creek. And I have only a vague recollection of when this actually came out, but it is really, really very, very good and incredibly accurate as it gets into all of the political machinations that led up to the dropping the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Very, very, very good. 3 hours long, but worth every single second of it. Hiroshima, the complete miniseries event.
Man. Marilyn Monroe Declassified. Marilyn Monroe Declassified. The interesting thing about this documentary about Marilyn Monroe, who of course died in 1962, left us in 1962 at the age of 36, is that it includes formerly highly classified FBI files.
Wow.
FBI information that have yet to be heard or seen or disclosed any place. So that's what's interesting here. Marilyn Monroe Declassified on Blu-ray from FilmRise and content. Building Star Trek. This is fun because this is what these people are doing in this film. This is what they're following.
This is actually really fun.
So 50 plus years since Star Trek. All kinds of props from that original series, right?
Yeah.
These people roam around looking for and finding the original props, everything from phasers and
spaceships,
the models,
communicators,
you name it. They look for it. They are very good at it. They are able to discern whether something is a fake or not. I mean, you could go on the Antiques Roadshow with the kind of information that these people have. So it's very interesting stuff, particularly if you happen to be, is it Trekkie? Is that the right word?
That's the right word, yes. Yes, not Trekker.
Not Trekker.
And then last 2 here, a couple of great ones from First One Features. True New York is 5 different short docs about New York City. Wonderful stuff. Really, really great. It's not sort of glorifying New York City. This is all about the people of New York. This is New York through the people. It's really interesting. You've got Sea Rock. About cliff jumping in the Bronx, Taxi Garage, which is self-explanatory, One Track Mind, A Son's Sacrifice, and Black Cherokee, about a roadside performer, which is just so amazing. This street artist from Harlem, such an amazing doc. It's about 2 hours and 10 some minutes. It is wonderful. All 5 of these are terrific. And then lastly, When Two Worlds Collide, which is all about this battle that is going on over the use of the rainforest. And it effectively is about whether or not the rainforest will become the source of industrial progress, of mining and natural gas and so forth, or whether or not it will be preserved as a natural wonder for the indigenous people. And this is a fascinating film, and it pulls you every which way emotionally, and it leaves you really asking more questions than giving you any more answers.
One of the things that film talks about is the sort of Western notion of saving the rainforest, which is this thing that we talk about, and how important that is for these indigenous peoples, while at the same time, because we don't want them to exploit the natural riches of the rainforest. They aren't able to do what we did over the course of the last 200 years.
Which is give their people an economy and housing and some level of economic prosperity.
As we exploited a good bit of our resources.
Because they want to move into the developed world. They want to have iPhones, and they want to have, home stereos and Blu-ray players, and they want to listen.
If it means cutting down a chunk of rainforest, then, I want, and, it's a little, because from the West, we look down there and we go, no, you don't want to do that. Well, you know what? I need shoes.
Yeah. It's a really interesting dilemma. All right, that's it. We are done this week, and Happy New Year once again. And we will be back next week while Mark is romancing in Paris.
Yes, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Until then, see you next week.
Bye-bye.